Hello and welcome to As the CMMC Churns. I'm Matt Titcomb, the CEO of Peak InfoSec, an authorized CMMC third-party assessment organization. I'm also a CMMC certified professional / assessor and a CMMC curriculum developer. Today's episode is DIBCAC Gaps. So let's first explain DIBCAC. So let's put some context into this. DIBCAC is actually an organization underneath the Defense Contract Management Agency that oversees all the DoD's contracting efforts. They do some work with other federal organizations, and they also support international partners, international contracts, stuff like that have got to be handled. Underneath them is the Defense Industrial Base Cybersecurity Assurance Center, or Assessment Center. DIBCAC is the organization that fundamentally handles all of the 800-171 certifications that go on for DoD. And we're going to go through a set of slides that they provided at a town hall about the major gaps that they found. And a copy of those slides link, I'm covering them up, so we'll include that in the hyperlink for when you guys get this. Now, got to give you guys the warning up front, and hint, we've told you this before. If you get audited by DIBCAC, they audit you with the DFARS clause and 800-171 on your full scope of applicability. No CMMC stuff here. This is full scope. Again, go back to our scope of applicability. That's what they look at. So before we go on, I do want to give a warning for the math-afraid people out there. We're briefly going to be talking math and looking at some of the charts that DIBCAC provided in their presentation. Now, they provided a series of charts, and this one was actually way at the end. And what it really kind of shows is a very nice big peanut butter spread of all the 117 assessments that they counted through, and it counted for 883 other than satisfied instances. Now, you get a very huge spike at the very start, and it quickly goes very flat and plateaus for a long time. Mathematically, sorry, math degree, math nerd, yeah, this looks interesting, but this is a very wide distribution. So it's kind of flat in reality when we kind of look at these. Now, they did provide an aggregation chart, and they kind of then focused on what is now they define as the top 10 other than satisfied. Yeah, I'm still kind of like, well, really? You just kind of picked the top 10 mathematically? It doesn't really mean much. I want to see the real detail. Open it up, look at the numbers. They ain't there. So, bummer. Now, they did provide another chart that was in there. It was a little bit more interesting. And this is the percentage of companies with top 10 other than satisfied requirements. Except the total of the percentages add up to 222%. So kind of go, wait, what? Mathematically, that's what us math nerds do. And then I go, yeah, we need to fix this chart. So that's kind of then take it to the next step and fix it and scale it down so everything matches at 100%. Now, changed it to a column chart like this and added a line in there that's kind of summing up all of these percentages. And this is now a Pareto line. We used this way back before gray hair and, all the hair started moving places it shouldn't be moving. When I was a second lieutenant, I was back in the days of total quality management, Deming management method, way before lean reengineering and Six Sigma. We did Pareto charts because you wanted to find that inflection point at a level, 45 degree, or where you got to 80%. That's where you focus most of your effort on, because stuff that kind of falls after that really generally is something that's kind of, it may not be worth looking at initially. This is how you get the most bang for your buck. And because of that, we're going to primarily focus on those first 5 that you now see in dark blue. The lighter ones, yeah, we may get to in later sessions. We'll see. So those first 5, oh wait, fair warning, we are now done with math. No more math. You're safe. You're good. So no more headaches. You can go on, and if you've muted me at this point, you can unmute me at this point. So those top 5 requirements, FIPS, that's the most one everybody complains about. And then we got multi-factor authentication, everybody's number 2 complaint. And then we get into basically a form of reporting on vulnerabilities and issues. And then we really do get into risk management for vulnerabilities and general risk. So let's talk about that first one. Now, we're going to push this off. There's a lot to talk about FIPS, so this will be our conversation next week in As the CMMC Churns on tips about FIPS. Catchy, isn't it? So now let's jump on to multi-factor authentication. So the reality is the very first thing everybody fails on is there's hidden requirements in the assessment objectives. In this case, there's 320 assessment objectives, and this one here is a hidden requirement. You are required to identify all privileged accounts. Now, that means all accounts for all components. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. All. So not just your Azure Active Directory, just your Active Directory. Every privileged component, you should be able to provide me a list of that's authoritative and accurate. If you can't, that one's not going to pass, then you fail the requirement. That's how the game goes. Well, the next one is 353 Bravo. Well, this is one that actually got us on at Peak InfoSec. This was our only non-compliant assessment objective out of all 320, which we got fixed in a week when we did our audit. And there's a very, very small line in the DoD cyber FAQs specific to this. And the requirement is that if for all local accounts for privileged users to all components, again, all, you're starting to figure out the theme here, you either have to support offline MFA. So if you've got a laptop or my computer, if the network's not on, it's got no network connectivity, it has no local area network or internet, and I'm trying to log into it, MFA must be enabled. Or access is blocked when offline. Okay, they got us on this one. There was a nuance issue with the Mac, and they said, yeah, your interpretation doesn't count. So we surrendered politely and quietly, and we implemented access is blocked when offline. So that would be an appropriate answer. And again, these are the areas where people are not properly understanding all the requirements and the nuances of the documentation around them to make sure you've got it covered. Now, for privileged accounts, it's again all privileged accounts to all components. Your firewall. Well, you log into your firewall, that's in scope. You're required to implement MFA. Have you implemented MFA when you log in? No? Oops, that's one where you're not going to be compliant. Now, likewise, non-compliant for all normal accounts to all things. Your VPN is a good example. If you're using a remote user VPN and you're connecting in, that has to be MFA'd. So again, all components for all accounts, normal and privileged. Realistically, 353 Bravo, best practice is to go ahead and do MFA for normal users when they're offline too, or if they're just a local privileged access, you really do want to enable MFA everywhere. So that's MFA. Now there is one tip in here for you guys, is MFA is not required for processes acting on behalf of authorized user, a PAL-BAL, also colloquially known as a service account. So again, these are things you can use to your advantage, but be cautious about overinterpreting that one. So you've got to define the periodic time frame for when they're going to be reported. Yay! Screw-ups. You need to make sure that's documented somewhere. Now, when it comes down to assessing risk, again, we have an organization-defined parameter again. Now, this is, again, a frequency question. So we start seeing words like frequency. You have to start to worry about, well, when and how often are you doing that? Is the ODP. And then the next question really is, are you actually doing it when it comes down to it? Now, there is one definition in the CMMC glossary that does come into play. Again, that periodicity cannot be anything greater than a year. Now, realistically, for this one, assessing risk, doing this on a monthly, a quarterly, semi-annual basis, you need to define that parameter. Typically, you're going to do that in a policy, or you're going to define that as a parameter that somebody sets in documents and publishes to your organization. But again, you cannot exceed 1 year. Now, you're also required to show that you've been doing this at least more than once. This is sometimes the other catch. You can show that you've had multiple smaller meetings, a new risk has come up, you've tracked it amongst your normal risk meeting. So again, they are looking for some repetition in you actually doing this. 3.12.2, scanning for vulnerabilities. Guess what? Periodically plays again on this one. Now in this one, we see again an ODP. What is that frequency by which you're going to be scanning? Now, if you are doing continuous monitoring with agent-based solutions, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, you've got Qualys, Rapid7, Tenable now is even in this game. Those agents now are doing continuous monitoring. You just need to specify that your defined time frequency is based on agent-based monitoring using the frequency defined by that one, and most of them are around 6 hours on normal is when they provide an update. Now, likewise, are you doing what it says? Are you scanning on that frequency? Related to this one is then, are you scanning your applications? Now, there's a nuance point in this. So, scanning your systems is classic vulnerability scanning. Scanning applications is tied to software development. So if you're only using COTS, you can actually mark this one as non-applicable because it really doesn't apply to you. This ties to the larger vulnerability management and management practices around secure software development. Same thing again for Delta. Again, this is, are you actually doing it? And then Echo is also something that could potentially be written as non-applicable if you're doing COTS. Now, we've talked a lot about ODPs and you guys doing it, and it is a recurring problem. So guess what? Bonus. You get to hear about 341, establish, maintain baseline configurations. We're actually only going to talk about the very first one. That is where you are establishing all of your organization-defined parameters. This is going through standard change management practice. However you do it, that's your definition of wanting to pursue it. But in reality, this is all about governance. This is why when you go back to As the CMMC Churns, one of ours, the little engine that could, we talked about your configuration management board, or what we call an IT steering group. That's the body that should be making these decisions and then making sure that they're being implemented on the rest of your other components. Again, this is a critical reason why many of these are failing, is because you've got a wild, wild west syndrome of your IT guys are just setting things willy-nilly, and there's no decision process, there's no documentation, and which really tells me you have no governance. And so that's going to be something that's going to pop up and be defined and documented here as a part of this control. So let's quickly sum up for you guys. First of all, DIBCAC does NIST 800-171 audits, not CMMC audits. Again, their scope is the full gamut. Be ready for that. Yeah, I really do want all the real math data and the DIBCAC data to kind of do a little bit better parsing. I didn't particularly like their charts. Now, the requirements do account to all account types. Hint, hint. And more importantly, the requirements apply to all components. You know, we've been pounding this home for a while that you've got to apply all 320 assessment objectives to all components, your people, your facilities, and your technologies. Just please do it. It makes life a lot easier. Now, when you're doing this and you're working through your ODPs, make sure you're using governance to establish and document them, and then validating that they're done as a part of that. Again, This is where you want to avoid doing procedures for everything. Use configuration items and a configuration management practice that will help to enable all of this to occur. And then lastly, do what your ODPs say. That's the only way you're going to be able to survive this. So next week, again, we'll be talking on tips about FIPS. And thanks again. I'm Matt Titcomb from Peak InfoSec, and thanks for joining us for As the CMMC Churns.